WWE superstar LA Knight is quite possibly the most over-professional wrestler in the entire industry right now. And you don't get to see a superstar connecting with the fans on his own at this level. Most wrestlers wait for the right opportunity and rely on the company to put them in great storylines that would make them popular among the fans. LA Knight didn't wait for the right time. He made the most out of what he was supposed to work with each and every week. Apart from his tremendous in-ring work and promo skills, what has got people talking is the similarities between LA Knight and The Rock. With the way he delivers his promos and catchphrases that fans chant with great passion, all of this is reminiscent of how The Rock became one of the greatest superstars of all time. With that being said, today we'll be looking at how the megastar LA Knight is the modern-day version of the People's Champion, The Rock. Let's get into it. Getting noticed as heels. Despite having a wrestling career that most crave for these days, The Rock's debut in WWE was pretty uneventful. He was first introduced to the entire world in 1996 as Rocky Maivia, a babyface gimmick who was hyped as the WWE's first third-generation superstar ever. It didn't take long for the fans to turn on the Blue Chipper gimmick, as it was entirely bland, and it offered nothing unique for the fans to invest their time in, especially during a time when WWE was in a fierce battle against WCW. The Rock turned his career upside down when he turned heel and joined forces with the Nation of Domination stable in 1997. A complete character change did wonders for The Rock. He began to refer to himself in the third person as The Rock. While he always had an in-ring talent and could go up against anyone on the roster, it was his ability to cut memorable and effective promos that took The Rock to legendary heights. Every week, The Rock would decimate his opponents on the microphone and would come up with unique catchphrases
Know your role and shut your mouth!
That fans would bring signs of in the arenas. Things went nowhere but up for the Brahma Bull. LA Knight, on the other hand, had an uneventful debut in the WWE too. It's almost unbelievable how the start of The Rock's career is similar to LA Knight's. Most people don't know that LA Knight used to work at NXT in 2014. He wasn't the superstar he is today, as he was seen as enhancement talent that put over other individuals. Knight was released in the same year, but he was determined as The Rock to make a name for himself. LA Knight's proper introduction to the wrestling industry came in the form of a heel run as Eli Drake. The main difference between Knight and The Rock is that Knight made a name for himself in different wrestling promotions, while The Rock spent his entire career in the WWE. Just as a heel turn worked well for The Rock, it worked out for Knight too. After joining Impact Wrestling, Knight would go on to win the Impact World Championship. However, just like The Rock, it was Knight's ability to talk naturally on the mic that made him an overnight success. Who would have thought that a simple, "yeah," would get hundreds and thousands of fans on the edge of their seats? Knight wasn't just a natural, he was beyond creative. The Fact of Life segments are proof of that. After a small stint with NWA, LA Knight returned to NXT in 2021, this time as a complete megastar. However, LA Knight and The Rock's similarities don't just end on their rise as a heel. Insane resemblance. Stars of the Attitude Era never forget to remind the fans that the current superstars wouldn't last a day in their time. But if there's someone who resembles the great mic workers and charisma of that era, it's LA Knight. Many have pointed out that Knight's gimmick feels straight out of the Attitude Era, but more than that, many have observed that LA Knight resembles The Rock to a large degree. The style with which he walks down to the ring feels exactly like how The Rock used to showcase his persona. The resemblance between the two goes up whenever Knight takes a microphone and begins to humiliate his opponents. The one thing that The Rock did in his entire career was come up with catchphrases that would stick with fans for years to come. LA Knight has been doing the exact same thing, and fans love to chant his catchphrases like, "Let me talk to ya," and of course the, "yeah." It doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. It also goes without saying that The Rock's voice is quite similar to Knight's. Sounds scary, right? Well, you might not know this, but LA Knight appeared in a reality competition TV show called The Hero back in 2013. And do you know who the host was? The man himself, The Rock. Many were amazed to see how similar both stars sounded, and even LA Knight admitted this when he was interviewed by Chris Van Vliet. Sometimes you would just hear my voice, or you'd hear his voice, and it would be tough to tell who it was until the person's face came on screen and you're like, oh, yeah, but I don't know. I don't think otherwise there's a whole lot alike. It's just my normal speaking voice. Babyface turn. With the increase in his popularity, it was only fitting for WWE to turn The Rock face in 1998. The Rock rose to the top after winning the WWE Championship, and his popularity soared further when he was involved with a legendary feud against Stone Cold Steve Austin. LA Knight, on the flip side of the coin, is experiencing the same path. Initially, Vince McMahon booked Knight as the awful manager named Max Dupree. Things changed when Triple H took creative control, and Knight returned to being back to himself. Knight's first proper feud on the main roster came against Bray Wyatt, who returned in a spectacular fashion at Extreme Rules last year. The company actually wanted to rebuild Bray as a force to be reckoned with. It was LA Knight who benefited the most from this feud, and most would even say that Knight carried the entire thing on his back. His promos were so intriguing that fans wanted Knight to appear on TV every week. The feud did wonders for Knight. Despite what you think of his match against Bray at this year's Royal Rumble, because of the crowd's natural love of his character, WWE has now turned Knight face as he's more popular than ever, but there's still something to be concerned about. WWE, however, seems to be putting their money on Knight, as they had him win the Slim Jim Battle Royal, and now they are setting him up for a feud with The Miz, who is also solid on the mic, and this should only help propel Knight to further popularity. Despite being the most over performer in the industry, WWE hasn't booked Knight perfectly. With Vince returning to the company this year, fans are worried sick if the company would ever pull the trigger on LA Knight. He wasn't a feature at this year's WrestleMania, which took place in Los Angeles of all places. LA Knight was the favorite to win the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, but they gave it to Damian Priest instead. The man couldn't even win the Fatal 4-Way match to earn a shot at the United States Championship on SmackDown. It's simple. The company should strike the iron while it's hot, and LA Knight is hotter than he was a few years ago. They have the opportunity to create a modern-day version of The Rock, and they are still uncertain about pushing Knight to the top. Did you hear the pop for his win at SummerSlam in their Battle Royal match? A worthless match that got a pop the size of when a superstar wins the Royal Rumble match. That speaks volumes. LA Knight should be a world champion by the end of next year. Plain and simple.
Yeah!